The Order of the Solar Temple, also known as the International Chivalric Organization of the Solar Tradition, was a religious movement founded in 1984 in Geneva, Switzerland, by a man named Luc Jouret and another man named Joseph de Mambro. The group saw themselves as a revival religion loosely based on Christianity and the Knights Templar order. A core part of their philosophy was a focus on spiritual existence above all other things. The group were to assist humanity in a spiritual transformation process. Joseph de Mambro was born into a strict Catholic family in rural France in 1924 and was exposed at a young age to stories about Judgment Day and the destiny of mankind. As a young man, Joseph studied to become a watchmaker and was successful in his job, but spent all of his free time studying occultism. When he was still a young man, he started participating in meetings with other like-minded people. During this time, Joseph started believing that he was the reincarnation of a series of important historical people, including the biblical figure Moses and an Egyptian pharaoh named Akhenaten. The other man who would later form the Order of the Solar Temple was Luc Jouret. Jouret was born in 1947 in the Belgian Congo and spent most of his early years as a paratrooper in the Belgian army. He later studied to become a doctor, and it was oddly enough in relation to his profession that Luc first found his interest in alternative belief systems as well as topics relating to spirituality and self-development. Luc Jouret traveled the world studying alternative medical treatments, and from his travel gained great amount of knowledge about different styles of spiritual healing practices and homeopathic approaches. Jouret, similarly to de Mambro, also had fantasies that he was the reincarnation of different historically significant people. Chiefly among them, he claimed to be a reincarnation of Jesus Christ himself. In the early 80s, both de Mambro and Jouret were mingling in the scene of alternative spirituality when they met each other and instantly had a connection. Together, they founded the Order of the Solar Temple in Geneva in 1984, and the main lodge would later be placed in Zurich, Switzerland. Both de Mambro and Jouret knew many people who might want to join them since they had such a long history in the alternative spirituality scene. The organization was set up with a leadership council made up of 33 members. The top leadership were in charge of regional lodges that would be used for initiation ceremonies and other spiritual rituals, mainly in Switzerland, Canada, and France. To keep the members engaged, the order offered extravagant social gatherings, occult study sessions, therapeutic work, and spiritual counseling. Many of the early members abandoned the group shortly after being introduced, but the ones who stayed became more and more convinced that the order and its leaders were actually in contact with the spiritual world. Both the leaders, de Mambro and Jouret, were preoccupied with making an impression that they were powerful masters of the spiritual realm. To help give this impression, they constructed an elaborate stage show rigged with hidden lights and an early generation hologram projector. The light shows greatly impressed the captive audience and spellbound them even further. 6 years after the inception of the order, Jouret and de Mambro had about 400 followers who followed their every command. Because of the group's size, journalists and public officials started noticing them more, and many criticisms were written about them in the newspapers and by anti-cult organizations. It was around this time that the leaders started making a plan for a spiritual transit. The followers were to join in a spiritual transformation that would take them onto the next plane of existence. That's what the leaders told them. This created some internal conflicts in the group, and a small part of the members decided to leave. The leaders did not fight too much against this, and after the defections, only the most convinced true believers remained in the group. A couple within the group, Antonio and Nikki Dutoit, had just had a child, which was not against the rules of the order. But when they named their child Emmanuel, which was the same name as one of Joseph DiMambro's children, it very much rubbed the leader the wrong way. DiMambro had long believed that his own child, Emmanuel, was an eminent spiritual being. He now started believing that the new baby, the son of Antonio and Nikki, was the Antichrist. At the same time, rumors spread that Antonio was telling other members that the light shows and holograms they had seen were not real. In fact, he himself had helped to install some of the equipment. DiMambro shared his thoughts with Luc Jouret and the other higher-ups, and while they slowly prepared for the spiritual transition, they had another task to handle first, destroying the Antichrist. DiMambro came to the idea that the Antichrist had to be killed either by a stake through the heart or stabbed 666 times. So he believed. Dissent within the group grew bigger as rumors of the faked light show appearances continued to reach more of the lower-ranked members. Some small number left the group like before, but it worked out only to further strengthen the beliefs of the remaining members. October 4th, 1994, in the quiet town of Morin Heights, Quebec, a villa was engulfed in a raging inferno. The police discovered 5 charred bodies among the rubble. The Dutoit couple, Antonio and Nikki, and their infant son had been brutally stabbed to death before the fire was started. According to Inspector Saint-Pierre, who investigated the case, it was a horrific scene. Both parents had several severe stab wounds, but the child, who was only 3 months old at a time, had been stabbed many more times than them. The culprits were revealed to be 2 Swiss members of the order, Jerry Genois and Colette Rochat, who initially set the villa ablaze and perished in the flames themselves after performing the executions. It was suspected the 2 others, Joel Egger and Dominique Bellaton, were involved in the plot. They were believed to have either orchestrated or supervised the murders in Morin Heights, before the morning after traveling to Switzerland to meet up with another large group of members of the order. Then, just a day later, on October 5th, on one location in Chéry and one in Granges-sur-Salvan, both in Switzerland, the police made another gruesome discovery. The officers found a staggering 23 bodies at Chéry and 25 at Salvan, along with the evidence of devices that had been used to start the fires. At Chéry, 3 adults had suffocated with plastic bags over their heads, while the rest had been killed by gunshots. Meanwhile, those in Salvan seem to have taken their own lives with a lethal mixture of drugs. The Swiss police launched a lengthy investigation that ultimately revealed that most of those at Chéry had been murdered, while at least half of those at Salvan had committed suicide. A large police investigation was now opened into the order. Police from several countries compared notes trying to find any remaining members, but the order had long known how to keep outsiders away. As the investigation was heating up, another chilling discovery linked to the order was made, this time in Grenoble, France. One day before Christmas Eve in 1995, another 16 members of the order were found dead, among them 3 children. Like before, the deaths seemed to be a mix of murders and suicides, everyone found to have been killed by gunshot wounds. French authorities were shocked to find that among the dead French members, one of them was a woman named Christiane Bonnet, a Swiss professional psychotherapist and one of the leaders of the order in Europe. Even more disturbingly was that 2 of the other members who had participated, Jean-Pierre Lardanchet and Patrick Vostin, were both active duty policemen at the time of the murders. The The third and last incident known to be linked to the order came 2 years after this. On May 23, 1997, in a small town called Saint-Casimir, Quebec, the lifeless bodies of 5 people were discovered in a house. The individuals were quickly found to be linked with the order. The investigation found that they had consumed large amounts of sleeping pills before intentionally setting the house on fire. Some died from asphyxiation, while others died from the fire itself. All in all, 74 members connected to the order, including its leaders, were all dead. French, Swiss, and Canadian police starting putting the pieces together that these murder-suicides were in fact all from the same group, all inspired by the leaders Desmembres and Jouret to transit to the next spiritual plane of existence. Stay safe, my friends.